It's the Shoal Weekly podcast bringing you the greatest showman, an online film festival celebrating all things Academy Awards. I'm your host, Joe, with Ben and Charlie. How you guys doing?
Not bad, mate. Yourself?
Okay, not too bad. Ben, how are you doing this week, mate?
Yes, I'm very excited this week. Once again, we've got some good films lined up for you all, and hopefully we can talk about some interesting stuff.
Yeah, it has been a good week this week in terms of films. We're on our third week now. Obviously, as you probably know by now, we are doing The Greatest Showman all the way up until the end of April. We're going to be doing a live watch-along of the 93rd Academy Awards next week, so stay tuned for that. We're still going to try and work out the logistics of it, but news will be coming soon. Again, we've had a really packed viewing schedule this week. We've given you 4 films at home to watch, all the way from Chaplin, 1992, No Country for Old Men by the Coen brothers. We've got a Wes Anderson animation, Fantastic Mr. Fox from 2009, and my personal favorite that I'm excited to talk about today, Ben Affleck and what's his name? Matt Damon. There we go. Matt Damon. Good Will Hunting, 1997. So before we get into that, please make sure you hit that notification bell. Drop us a like and a follow. You can follow all of our socials for updates and news. And as always, we really appreciate the support. We've really enjoyed doing this festival. To be honest, we can't wait to wrap it up and then to also get back to some good old The Shoal Weekly podcast. But before we crack on and talk about Chaplin, Ben, have you watched anything this week?
Cool. Cheers,
and
man.
He's muted himself, hasn't he? Ben.
Ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Oh,
that is stupid.
Man.
You're such a dickhead.
I was talking as well.
We're leaving that in.
No.
Oh, ridiculous. Go on.
Ben, what have you been watching this week, mate?
So this week I have had a slightly slow week, considering we've had quite a few films to watch for the podcast. So we managed to squeeze in the first half of Captain Marvel, which was actually quite good. You know what? It's better the second time round. I don't have as many issues as I did have with it, so I'm enjoying it. It's good.
I definitely think once you've watched, once you watch it once, and then once you watch Endgame and Infinity War, I think going back to Captain Marvel was really good. And I think one fix that I would kind of make to Captain Marvel is that if it had been released after Endgame, then it would have been quite a surprise for her to just show up in the battle. Imagine you've never met this character before. She flies in, she destroys Thanos' ship, spoiler alert. And then it's like, oh my God, who is this? And then she lands, and then she goes up to Spider-Man. She's like, hey, I'm Captain Marvel. And he's like, oh, I'm Peter Parker. So I feel like that would have been good. And then they could have done Captain Marvel as like a flashback,
Yeah, I get that. But they needed her, didn't they, to save...
I mean, they needed her, but then, she wasn't there for the first 3 Avengers films, so her showing up as a surprise could have been a really good kind of fan service moment.
I suppose her showing up as a surprise, though, she still did, wasn't it? She saved Iron Man, she rocked up. And
but I mean, what I'm saying is, imagine if she didn't save Iron Man, her first appearance in the MCU ever was when she, comes out of the clouds, and Iron Man's computer AI is like, boss, there's something centered at the upper atmosphere. So I don't know. I think maybe that would have been pretty cool, because before watching Endgame and Infinity War, you had Captain Marvel, and I did kind of find it a little bit bland as an MCU. I mean, can't speak for Charlie, but that's probably what he thinks about all.
I've not seen it. I'm not gonna lie.
I'm predicting that Charlie won't like it based on my knowledge of Charlie's love for Marvel and superhero films alike. But speaking of Charlie, have you watched anything decent this week?
Well, apart from the films we've watched, no. I watched
No.
Scoob. Oh my
As in
God.
Scooby-Doo?
Like the new one. And oh my God, it was awful.
Is it an animation or is it live action?
Yeah, it's like a animation, but it's...
Right.
Oh my God, mate. I love Scooby-Doo, but that was...
Yeah.
It was awful. It was ridiculous.
Oh no.
The first 10 minutes, it's awesome. It's like Shaggy and Scooby when they're young. And they first meet, and he adopts him. and then it switches up to this Avengers style thing where they like try and defeat Dick Dastardly, which is just a strange crossover that I
Right.
didn't think would ever happen. And they meet this like superhero dude who has this dog as a sidekick, and they
Oh
go.
no, not a second dog.
No.
This is a second, but it's a robot dog.
Oh god.
Oh, it's like Godzilla versus Mecha Godzilla.
Yeah, but it's just ridiculous, and they join this sort of superhero gang, and there's no mystery to it. It's just strange.
That sounds awful. That sounds, I don't know. That I must watch it.
Yeah, I mean, you can go for it. Like, it's one of. Now I've said how ridiculous it is. It's one of those where you don't really believe it until you see it.
Yeah.
Please tell me they got the line in right. I would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for you meddling kids.
Yeah, they did. They got that line in twice.
Twice.
Wow.
It's awful. The guy who voices Scooby is just not the one. Shaggy is just not the one. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, well, I actually remember about a year ago, Matthew Lillard, who plays Shaggy in the live action ones and has done the voice ever since. Like, he actually got the blessing of the original voice actor who played Shaggy all the way back in the 1960s.
Wow.
Like, so to a lot of Scooby-Doo fans, Matthew Lillard is Shaggy. Like, he's the second Shaggy, but he has become like so amazing. And he wasn't even like called to do this movie. Ridiculous. That's all I know about it. Like, they just replaced him with some B-list Hollywood, like, I don't know. I don't even know who it was. But
he does like that, the classic, like, like Scoob. He does that sort of, but it's just, it's like a parody. Like, it's horrible to listen to.
I think everyone has really gotten used to Matthew Lillard's voice because he did such an incredible, like, impersonation of Shaggy in the live-action movie.
Yeah, they were actually decent. They're
really good films. They are really good.
I mean, they're so bad they're good. Like, they've got that vibe. But hey, maybe if you folks at home are interested in us watching the Scooby-Doo duology, we'll definitely check that out and we'll talk about it in an episode of the Shoal Weekly podcast.
Is that what it's
for
called?
Sure.
Duology?
Well, it's only 2, isn't it?
That's
they didn't
amazing.
make a third one.
But I thought it was a pun on Scooby-Doo, like duology. That's what I thought you were going for.
Yes, exactly. No, that was exactly what I was going for.
Well, it is now.
It's in the notes. Just check the notes. It's there.
So we're going to say, this is the Shoal Weekly podcast. This week we're doing the Scooby-Dooby duology. Oh, that's terrible. Okay.
That's the title sorted for that week.
There we go. The Scooby-Dooby duology. Blimey.
What have you been watching, Joe?
I don't think I've had quite as an entertaining week in terms of what I've watched. I have been catching up on the Bold Type. I know Ben's been watching that. Trying to finish off. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm probably going to finish it tonight. Season 4. It's pretty good, and actually, I'm interested to talk about it a little bit today in relationship to Good Will Hunting, and I'll get more into that later. But yeah, it's a great show on Netflix. Go check it out. It's about 3 incredibly successful women in New York working for this this kind of cosmopolitan style magazine called Scarlet, and it's fantastic. It's a very progressive show, and it's not particularly it's not particularly inventive. It kind of sticks to traditional drama show tropes, but I think how progressive it is. It's very entertaining, and the drama's great, and to be fair to the cast, the performances are really good too. Absolutely
solid.
What else have I been watching? I think I watched half of Us from 2019. Jordan Peele's. That was his sophomore outing as director.
Oh, it's not just a TV show. It's not the TV show.
Oh yeah, no. Not the TV show. It was the horror film that Jordan Peele did.
Okay.
After the success of Get Out, he did another very people of color cast. It was a very good film. It wasn't about racism at all, not in the same way that Get Out was.
Right.
And when actually questioned about it, he was like, "Oh, why have you got so many black people in this film? Like, is it about race?" And he was like, "No, that's just I just cast good actors." Like,
right.
So everyone was thinking it was going to be another Get Out, but it's a strange horror film. It's about this family who goes to Santa Cruz for the weekend. They've got a little beach house there, and in the evening they look out onto the driveway, and there's like another family in their driveway, and it's their doppelgangers.
Oh,
okay, cool.
Yeah, and they break in, and I won't spoil it for anyone because it's got quite a good twist in it, but it's kind of freaky and very Jordan Peele. Didn't quite have the success that Get Out did, and the script is a little, what's the word? Not as fresh as Get Out was.
Right. Okay.
The story wasn't quite as fresh, but still great flick. So go and watch it. But obviously, this week we are talking about, I think, arguably my favorite week of the festival.
Wow,
Obviously,
really?
yeah. I mean, well, next
Okay.
week we've got the 2021
Nominations.
of which I haven't seen yet. So that's my plan for all of next week. But I think looking back at the first week and the second week and this one, there were just some really, really good films this week, and I think decent ones to talk about. But why don't we start off with Chaplin? Chaz, why don't you give us a breakdown of Chaplin and why? Because you picked this film for the festival, and why did you pick it, and would you recommend it to people?
Yeah. So what it's about is basically a biopic of Chaplin's life. If you don't know who Chaplin is, then
Get Out.
ridiculous. How don't you like how? But he's basically a silent comedy star from back in the early days of cinema, and in this, Robert Downey Jr. plays Chaplin. We see his poverty in the beginning of his life, and then right through to stardom, and then his acceptance speech at the Oscars.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a very good film. I don't know what you think about the accent, Joe.
Well, yeah. I mean, watching it, I kind of it's a very Robert Downey Jr. English accent.
It's very he does it in Sherlock as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
That same accent.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think in
Yeah.
Sherlock it's a little bit more ironed out,
Yes.
but then also
He wasn't on drugs then, though, so
yeah, no.
that might have something to do with it.
Savage.
Honestly, as a side note, Robert Downey Jr.'s Hollywood comeback is one of the greatest success stories of recent cinema.
I can't wait for that to be a film.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Someone
wow.
playing Robert Downey Jr. going through drugs and then
being Iron Man.
Can you imagine
Yeah.
if they did that film and then they did a scene where Robert Downey Jr. is playing Chaplin? So it's a
that'd be mint.
biopic about a
That'd be- yeah.
biopic. Yeah.
That'd
Just
be
some actor playing Robert Downey Jr. on the set of some silent film playing Chaplin.
It's it's a filmception.
Yeah.
It's very fourth wall, that.
And then
Yeah,
they the clapperboard comes down and they cut and then he just goes into his trailer and does a line of coke.
And then it comes out of the film again, and Robert Downey Jr. is directing the film about himself.
And he cameos as some Hollywood executive.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, you're never gonna you're a bad man. You're never gonna make it as an actor ever again. Like, you're going to prison. And then later on they they age the actor a little bit and they put a few more wrinkles on him, and then J.K. Simmons turns up playing Kevin Feige and is like, do you want to be Iron Man?
But he's got an eye patch on, and it's actually part of the MCU.
Oh yeah.
There's a post-credit scene.
And Chris Rock is playing Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's it. We need to write that now.
Yeah, obviously.
Shoal presents.
Yeah, that sounds banging.
Yeah, I'll have to think of a name for it. But yeah, no, good accent or nah in Chaplin, like I said, it's a very Robert Downey Jr. accent. But then a kind of a counter argument to support his attempts at the accent is we don't have a lot of recordings of Chaplin speaking.
Yeah.
More sort of towards the 1950s when he was on a lot of radio shows, and then
his English accent's sort of gone by then anyway.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
I think it came back a little bit when he was older in England. Because there's when he gets his acceptance, when he does his acceptance speech for his honorary award at the Oscars, that's he has a very received pronunciation there. But my guess is that, during the golden age of Hollywood, during, when the first talking films started to emerge, there was this struggle where American audiences couldn't really understand English accents.
Right.
Because, you got to imagine this is a world without internet, and the only voices that you hear are your friends and your family or people that you meet in your local area. People didn't travel as much.
Yeah.
But nowadays with TV and streaming and YouTube and internet, we consume more voices on a weekly basis than like a person 100 years ago would have consumed in a year.
Yeah, that's
So it
mad, isn't it?
meant that, yeah, it is mad. So it meant that when a lot of Hollywood stars started to appear in talking films, they had to adjust their accent, and because of that, an entirely new invented accent was created called the transatlantic accent.
Right.
And you can hear that a lot in, Darth Vader. That's
Okay.
it's still used now, like modern day, a Scar in The Lion King. But then obviously, if you go back, it was that kind of like 1940s accent where it was all very nasally and not quite American and not quite English.
Right.
And so I kind of get the feeling that Robert Downey Jr. was aiming for that a little bit as Chaplin, because I imagine, Chaplin, even though he was a silent film star, getting to Hollywood, it wouldn't have been difficult for him to accommodate and lose his native English received pronunciation. So for what it's worth, I think we'll give him a pass for that, because it's kind of like a happy coincidence that it sounds a little bit off.
Yeah, I will
But it's
say,
yeah.
his speech, in The Great Dictator, that the very like well famous speech, he does
Yeah.
that very well. Like that is on point. If you like listen to the
Yeah.
film and then Robert Downey Jr. doing it, it's on point.
That's quite a famous clip on its own right. Like I've
Yeah,
not watched the film, but I've seen that clip, and it's good.
On the other foot, though, I feel like as a voice coach and dialect coach, I have to criticize that particular performance. When he's doing that speech, because there's a big difference between doing a performance / evocation of someone very famous and then doing an impersonation.
okay,
And
right.
and it's a very great job, but what I really like in biopics is when actors put their own spin on it. Not too much, because then you're not doing a biopic, but when you're performing someone who's very famous, you either have to choose between doing it bang on and just doing an impersonation, at the risk of kind of losing a lot of creative license yourself as a performer, or do you decide to, like Michael Fassbender when he played Steve Jobs, he didn't quite get Steve Jobs' voice, but it was still an evocation of Steve Jobs. And so, that's why he was nominated for various things, because at the end of the day, he was an actor and he was performing, and we're not expected, or well, you're not expected as an actor to, if you're playing someone famous, to completely impersonate them. So I would say I would have liked a little bit more creative license with that speech, because it's so famous and you hear it a lot. Like, it's even
Yeah,
in Paolo Nutini's track Iron Sky. It's quoted everywhere. And so maybe just a little change in intonation, or just mixing it up a little bit from our DJ could have gone a long way. But then, of course, there is the argument that it's such a famous speech. How much creative license can you have with it?
yeah. Like you're not going to make that speech any better than
Yeah, no,
what it already
exactly.
is, are you? So
Exactly. Yeah.
what's the point in trying to do it a different way
But
when it already
yeah,
works the way it is?
it's a big debate in the voice acting and voice coaching world, when you're teaching an actor, because no doubt there would have been a voice coach, dialect coach on the film. I don't know who it was, but there would have been someone helping out our DJ with his voice. And as a voice coach, you have to make a choice with the director as to whether you are going to aim for an evocation or an impersonation, and it becomes quite a difficult thing to balance.
Mm.
And a lot of the time, you'll get a director just saying a bit of both, which is really complicated to then have to teach to an actor, because you're
Right.
basically saying, get this spot on, but also be yourself. And that can be quite scary
Yeah, it's hard.
for an actor. I'm just trying to think of like biopics that really evoke that, like
The Doors one.
yeah, exactly,
I
yeah.
forgot what it's called, but yeah, the Oliver Stone
Or
one, isn't it?
then Philip Seymour Hoffman playing Truman Capote.
Right.
He gets that. He gets the mannerisms and the laugh like bang on, but he makes the voice his own, and it feels organic instead of stiff. And the big criticism I would have with RDJ is that he's very animated and physical, and he gets that physicality amazing,
Mm.
but the accent's really rigid and stiff, because
Right.
it doesn't feel like he owns it and it's his own. He's basically looking at the script and saying, okay, how much like Charlie Chaplin can I make this line sound?
I see.
and so
Yeah,
it
that's
doesn't
true.
feel as organic.
I feel like I was just gonna say about the slapstick and stuff. He does that really well though.
Oh
As
yeah.
you've said, like it's. Yeah.
Hmm.
But then when I was looking at it, I was like, is it funny because I know the Chaplin version and I'm
Yeah.
just watching someone copy it, or is it funny because Robert Downey Jr.'s making it his own action and stuff like that? I don't know. Like that's such a like. Is it just funny
I
because
think it all
Chaplin
comes
did it?
down to comedy, doesn't it? You know, when you go to like a stand-up live comedy show, I always laugh out loud when a comedian does an impersonation of someone famous. Like there's something about impersonating another person that humans find really interesting because it transcends identity and it can be very uncanny and it, it is very enjoyable. So I think humans really enjoy watching biopics a lot
Yeah,
because they like seeing something impersonated, because whether it's comfortable or not, I don't know. Whether someone like you who loves Chaplin and has watched all of his movies, I don't want to speak for you, but I imagine like watching someone trying to replicate that is really really entertaining, and I think that's one of the
yeah,
main enjoyments of biopics.
and to do it so well, like to actually like that physicality that
Hmm.
Chaplin had to actually do it and make it look effortless is hard.
Yeah,
It's hard.
absolutely. Yeah, I
He does
completely
it well.
agree. Yeah, I mean, also look at someone like what's her name in who played Bob Dylan?
Oh, Kate
Kate,
Winslet.
no,
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 no, it's not.
that's Titanic.
Yeah,
She played
Kate
Galadriel in
Blanchett.
the Lord. There, Kate Blanchett. Yeah, playing Bob Dylan again. That's a woman playing the role of a man, and so obviously you're never going to get quite the resonance there that Bob Dylan had. But she made it her own, and she had that evocation down to a T.
Yeah,
So I think when it comes to biopics, you either want to cast an actor who looks just like them and who can be so physically identical to the person you're trying to capture.
well, it's like
You know,
Timothy Chalamet is gonna
mm,
they're doing another biopic of Dylan, and he's cast as Dylan. So like, obviously he looks a lot like Dylan, but I don't know
yeah,
if
yeah.
he can pull off the performance.
Well, we'll have to see,
Oh,
won't we?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see if he can do it.
Again, I get the sense that he's just been cast that because of his looks.
Yeah,
If someone said to me, "Oh, we're going to do a biopic about Bob Dylan. Who do you want to cast as Bob Dylan?" I'd be like, "Oh, who is scrawny and has really curly hair
yeah.
and has like a deep kind of drawling voice." Oh, there we go, Timothy Chalamet. You're hired. Anyway, let's talk about the fact that Chaplin was a bit of a snub. So this week we actually have focused a lot on snubs.
They
So
all are, aren't they? I
Chaplin,
don't think really any of them really won what they were supposed to. Or
well, No
like,
Country for Old Men won Best Picture, but we've mainly put down that it was snubbed for cinematography because and we'll talk
yeah,
about that in a little bit. But Roger Deakins, been nominated for 17 Academy Awards in his lifetime and only recently won his first one for Blade Runner.
that's mad.
So, yeah, we'll definitely talk about that. But yeah, Chaplin was up against Al Pacino. Sorry, Robert Downey Jr. was, not Chaplin. Up against Al Pacino, Clint Eastwood, Stephen Ray, and Denzel Washington. I mean, have you seen any of the other films that
I've
they were
not
in?
actually. No,
No.
I can't. I don't even know what they are.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, what films? What
I'm
films are
guessing
they?
the Clint Eastwood one was a western of some sort.
Well, maybe not. In 1992, I think he was still doing westerns then. He's kind of moved on to be a director now
Yeah,
in his older
true, true.
years. So yes, well, I know that Al Pacino, he won that for Scent of a Woman. If you haven't seen that really good film, it's actually, I think, still on Netflix at the moment, and that's about this blind man. He's the protagonist is actually this grammar school boy. He's 17, and he decides to get a part-time job to support him through his studies, and he decides to become this helper to this blind veteran. Uh, he,
Okay.
he went blind in the war, and so Al Pacino plays this really, really grumpy, very bitter blind veteran, and basically says he needs a helper for the weekend to escort him to New York. And Al Pacino, he plays this very big, even though he's bitter. As soon as he arrives in New York, he's spending all of his cash. He's dancing with like really beautiful women, even though he's blind. He's on the dance floor, and he's very kind of poetic about being blind. He's constantly throughout the film saying that he doesn't need to um, see to dance a tango or to love a woman. And the whole trope of the film, the reason why it's called Scent of a Woman is that, whenever a woman walks past, he always knows because he can tell what kind of perfume they're wearing. He'll know the brand.
Right, okay.
It's
and
not creepy at all.
No, it's a bit
so
weird.
it sounds really creepy, and when you read the Netflix synopsis, it's very creepy. But when you actually watch the film, it's quite sweet because mild spoiler alert here is that the reason he's going to New York for the weekend and spending loads of cash is because he's so depressed that he intends to kill himself.
Right.
In this hotel in New York, and he just wants to live his best life for a few more days, fancy meals and all of that. And it becomes a really nice story of this grammar school boy actually just trying to make him realize he's got a lot to live for. And it's Al Pacino's very famous. When everyone tries to impersonate him, they always go like "hoo-ah."
Right.
It's that film. So
Okay.
yeah, go and watch it. It's good. I just caught it randomly one night when I didn't know what to watch, and I don't regret it. So I can see why he won that performance for sure. Because again, going back to what we talked about, when you perform, you either make it your own, or in the case of RDJ doing an impersonation, sometimes impersonations just aren't enough to win big awards.
Yeah.
And that's why, Michael Fassbender didn't win for Steve Jobs. That's why Leonardo DiCaprio didn't win for Jordan Belfort in The Wolf of Wall Street. It's really hard for an actor to win best actor for an impersonation.
Yeah, I feel that the physicality of Chaplin made it stand out a bit more though.
Yeah.
Than if it was literally just like Jordan Belfort is. It's not particularly taxing on like physicality level, is it? It's more
of course.
But I think the thing with that is like the script. Chaplin a lot of his stuff was silent movies, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
it's kind of the physicality is the it's like the main method of communication.
Yeah.
So that's super important, and it's good.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about No Country for Old Men, 2007, the Coen brothers. Ben, you kind of took this film as a bit of homework for the week. I'm excited to know what you thought about it because, again, with a lot of films this week, I've seen them before, and I'm really glad that we decided to talk about them. But I know there's a few films this week, but you guys haven't seen before, and it's always nice to get a fresh take on something. So why don't you break that film down for us and yeah.
Yeah, of course. So No Country for Old Men is from 2007. Budget of 25 million, box office at 171.6 million. So it's pretty successful in that regard. It's not like breaking any records, but it was pretty successful. It actually has a lot of award nominations, like a lot. But the Academy Awards that we're focusing on, it got 8 nominations, of which it won 4. So it won Best Picture, it won Best Supporting Actor, it won Best Director, and it won Best Adapted Screenplay. It was also nominated for the cinematography, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, about how it was maybe snubbed. And then we're talking about, it also got nominated for the film editing, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Sound Editing, which, if you want to know my thoughts on it, is a little bit ironic because there wasn't really much sound in the film. It's kind of one of my gripes, but I see why they did it, but it was just kind of weird.
It's hard to edit silence,
Yeah, for sure.
Charlie knows that all too well when Ben decides to mute himself and forget to unmute.
This is a personal attack that I'm aggrieved by.
At least he hasn't talked about Avatar yet.
No, don't say that. He's going to talk about Avatar now.
So it actually got. I thought the start was pretty impressive. It actually was nominated 109 times for awards across all of the different awarding bodies. Like the countless.
Can't think of one. You can't think of
a single one. I was going to say BAFTAs, but that's like completely. That's not right because that's British television, isn't it? And
right? No, it would have still been counted.
Would it?
Yeah.
All right, okay. So it won 76 out of 109 nominations, which is pretty ridiculous. Yeah. That's pretty good.
Could have done better.
Right, Joe.
They could definitely have broken that 8% boundary.
How many film awards have you got?
Well, you never know. Shoal presents. It could real take off.
Hey,
He's gonna give
just
him.
you wait until my Robert Downey Jr. biopic wins Best Picture, Mister.
I'll be there in the audience. Yeah, you're going to pay for my ticket. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't know.
We'll promote it on Shoal.
Yeah.
Yeah, you better. But yeah,
Um,
76 awards, not bad.
yeah, not bad. Good effort. I was actually very surprised to find out that Javier Bardem, who won Best Supporting Actor, as I'm not even going to try and pronounce the name because I know I'll butcher it.
Anton Chigurh.
Anton Chigurh. He is the first Spanish actor to win an Oscar, which
Mental.
I don't know. I mean, for 2007, like, I mean, Oscars have been around for like what 50
A few
years. at this
years, yeah.
point? Yeah, like there's
I know that when the directors Joel and Ethan Coen approached him about playing Chigurh, he said, "Well, I don't drive. I speak really bad English. I hate violence." And the Coen brothers just like fell in love with him more for that response because they were like, that's why we called you.
Mm.
And I think it plays off really well because he just plays this really obscure psychopath
yeah.
expertly. And I think they actually used the inspiration for his haircut they took from this picture of a brothel in 1979.
Oh God.
And so they cut his hair based on this picture of this random dude at this brothel.
Wow.
He actually said in his acceptance speech for the Best Supporting Actor, he actually said, "Thank you for making me wear the worst haircut ever on film."
Yeah,
It's like
not
he was like,
Shout.
"Oh no, I'm not gonna get laid for the next 2 months." Like he said that as well. But I know the Coen brothers actually high fived each other because it meant that Chigurh would look as creepy as they had hoped for.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, it's good. It's actually funny enough talking about near misses with actors. This film has an absolute story of actors that almost didn't play it, and
Mhm.
actors that dropped out and came back and changed their minds. And it's always interesting. Actually, sometimes what makes a film is an actor and their performance. And what if the actor walked away for different reasons? Like for example, Josh Brolin, who plays the kind of the hero character, the hero to our villain. He actually he was very, very nervous about the film because of the lack of lines that he had, and the fact that it's quite there's not a lot of script in it in terms of kind of there's not tons of dialogue in lots of scenes. It's a kind of a bit like Drive, isn't it? Is it Drive, the Ryan Gosling one, where there's lots
Yeah,
of
yeah. I'm so
like
proud of you.
I made a reference, Joe. I did it. Yeah, it's just really interesting how this film was kind of one of those almost didn't happen kind of films, and that's really good. It actually in 2007, so the year it was released, it actually made more top 10 lists for critics than any other film. So it was
Mental.
very, very well received critically.
It's not that good.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, on Rotten Tomatoes, the critic score is quite a bit higher than the audience score. So maybe that kind of gives you a little bit more information about the film. And in 2016, it was voted the 10th best film of the 21st century, as picked by film critics.
That is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know if it's a good film. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know if it's that good.
yeah, I think personally that Avatar should be above it. On that
Obviously. Do you know what? Scoob should be above it.
Yeah,
I don't know what's worse: Ben always plugging Avatar all the time, or Chaz being devil's advocate with every good film on the list.
We
Keeps
got to
me
be
on my
consistent.
toes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just plugging Avatar. It's I can't wait for Avatar 2. Oh,
Electric Boogaloo.
Electric.
Yeah, no, I think my thoughts on No Country for Old Men was I liked it, but at the same time I didn't liking it because it was really weird. Like it was just like I was trying to maybe I was trying to be lazy, but I knew what it was trying to say, like underneath, the theme and the topic and what
It was trying to say
talk
that
about.
there's no country for old men.
What? Oh,
Mind
that's why it's called that.
Yeah.
Oh my
Oh, it
god.
all makes sense now.
Now Charlie likes the film.
Yeah, that's the best film I've ever seen.
Yeah, why is it only 10th on the list? It should definitely be first on the list.
I think, I mean, I did a little bit of research on the film, and there's a very interesting way that it handles plot, and I think that's why it can be uncomfortable for a lot of people. I watched the film last year with my family during lockdown, and they were very excited to watch this kind of like modern neo-Western film. And at the end, like my mum and my auntie were both like, "Was that it?" Like,
Like scratching the head sort of thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was exactly the same, and I think that's the point because the film does this really good thing where it doesn't underestimate the audience, and it forces us to participate in the film, and it does this really clever thing where it, instead of giving us 4, it gives us 2+2.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is,
You have to figure it out yourself.
yeah. So it doesn't review a plot event directly, like hardly once. And there are just some really, like, I mean, a good example is when Anton Chigurh kills Woody Harrelson's FBI agent, and then the phone rings, and he picks up his feet off the floor because the blood's rolling towards his shoes, and he doesn't want to get them dirty, so he puts his feet up on the bed.
Yeah.
And then an hour later, at the end of the film, after Llewellyn is dead and his wife's on her own, Anton is at her house, or her mother's house, waiting for her. And instead of us seeing Anton kill Llewellyn's wife, all we see is Anton leaving the house after this very abrupt edit in the film. And there's no exposition, there's no lines, there's no police sirens, there's no blood, literally nothing. The only thing that we see is Anton check his shoes, which I
Nice.
find, like, the detail is like really nice, and that just tells you as an audience, he's doing the same thing he did with the FBI agent. He doesn't want his shoes to get bloody. So there's stuff like that where I think the reason it's difficult to watch, and I think the reason that people get frustrated with it, is because the film relies on an audience's experience with film and with story. And this is no disrespect to anyone who just enjoys like a blockbuster chick flick or something easy and sort of like brain killing. But if you're the kind of person who only exclusively watches films like Ben does, then
Whoa!
I'm joking.
Whoa!
No. No, what I'm trying to say is, if you're only used to watching a certain type of film, such as something like that, then when it comes to watching something like No Country for Old Men, because the film relies on an audience's innate knowledge of film and story, it's not easy watching, because it departs from convention in such a unconventional way.
Yeah, no, I definitely get that. I mean, I did enjoy it. I didn't dislike it. I just think maybe a bit like what Charlie said, the fact that it's heralded as this 10th best film of the 21st century. I was just kind of like, did I enjoy it that much? Like, yes, it was fun to kind of go, well, did he kill her? Did he not kill her? Did he do this? Didn't it? And the kind of all of the subtle twists and the kind of underlying themes and messages it was trying to get across. Like, I did enjoy that, but the fact that they just spent the whole film building, like, between, you've got Llewellyn, this kind of war veteran who's the kind of the hero of the story, kind of finds if you've not watched the film, he basically finds this briefcase with $2 million, pretty much in the kind of aftermath of a Mexican standoff on the Mexico border. Fun, bit of irony there. And he goes away with it, and the Javier Bardem, the Anton, the serial killer, he basically is a serial killer, but he's a hitman, and he's hired to track him down and get the money back. And it just there's this huge film like building to this end point, and then they do exactly that. They just give us 2+2 again, and it for me, it fizzles out. I get it, I understand it, and I'm intrigued by it in that respect, but for me, it just fizzles out, and I kind of just left me a little bit empty in a nice way. It was just kind of like, well, I just kind of I wanted to see the climax. I didn't really get that. But like you said, everybody experiences film their own way and have their own take on things. I'm going to go to Charlie on this one because I know he's probably thinking about my lines. What did you think of the film, Charlie?
I don't think it's the Coen brothers' best film. Inside Llewellyn Davis is a better film. They did True Grit as well, didn't they? They did the remake of it.
Yeah, and Fargo.
It's just not.
Hail Caesar
It's
as
just
well.
not their best film.
Hang on a second. Hail Caesar is definitely not a good film. Did you
It's
like
not.
that film?
No.
I've
No,
not seen it,
no.
but
Oh God.
I think with the Coen brothers, if I can give them a very big compliment, is that I feel like they do subversion very well. Sometimes it doesn't work out, like Hail Caesar, and then in your guys' case, it doesn't quite work out for you guys with No Country for Old Men. But then other times it works amazingly, and that's my personal opinion on No Country for Old Men, is that they just subvert all convention of film, and I know that can be really frustrating, but I find it really charming, and I don't really, I didn't feel like I lost anything not seeing the climax. Like Llewellyn Moss is just killed off screen, and in an interview, the Coen brothers actually even said, the convention of film is so ingrained in us that we always expect that the good guy is going to meet the bad guy, and then they're going to confront each other, and there's going to be this poetic ending. But what I really like about Moss's off-screen death is that it puts us in the shoes of Sheriff Bell, played by what's his name? I've forgotten his name now.
Tommy Lee
Jones. There we go.
Yeah.
And all the way throughout the film, you feel like you're following Llewellyn, when really, to me, the protagonist is Sheriff Bell, because he's as equally confused with all the killings as we are as audience. And when Llewellyn Moss dies off screen, it puts us in the shoes of Sheriff Bell. And instead of this big confrontation between Sheriff Bell and Anton Chigurh, the film just quietly ends on this recount of a dream. And in sort of true Sopranos fashion, it just finishes kind of like at the end of a mid sentence and cuts to black, and that's it. And in a way, that's Sheriff Bell accepting his fate that, roll credits, there's no good country for old men anymore. And I think, as audience members, we're left to think about the ending. And I think the fact that we're now talking about it 14 years later is exactly what the Coen brothers wanted when they adapted this book.
Yeah, that's fair.
Also, it was the first film to be edited fully digitally on Final Cut Pro. Just throwing that in
Really?
there as a bit of trivia. Yeah.
Wow. Why did you use Final Cut? That's weird.
Wait, don't you use Final Cut?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But like, if I was doing it professionally, I wouldn't. Like, that's definitely not the right software. But
So does No Country for Old Men get your seal of approval, chaps?
yeah,
Yeah,
it's a good
does.
film. Like, I don't know if I'd watch it again.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for me, there isn't enough rewatchability in there for it.
I think I would watch it again, but like you said, Joe, it subverts. I think if you, I enjoyed it more once I'd done some research into it and kind of found out why it was trying to, why it was being subversive and what it was trying to be about. That definitely kind of made more of it not quite make sense, but it kind of just ticked the boxes a bit on it. For example, the fact that there's no music, there's no score really. It's just like they use the wind as a score. The
I really
wind
like
is
that
kind
though.
of
I'm not
I
gonna
like
lie.
it too. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like it. I do like it, and it's a really nice feat, kind of touch, and like you said, it's subverts what you would expect from a film. There's not,
Especially a western.
yeah,
Not gonna lie, the first time I watched it, I didn't notice that the soundtrack was gone.
I mean, that's probably a good thing, isn't it? Like you
Yeah.
enjoyed it that
Yeah,
much. But yeah, it's definitely, it's the opposite of what is, if
Expected.
we look at,
Mhm.
if you look at the biggest films that are in film, I hate to bring it up again, but take
Here it goes.
Avatar,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Highest grossing film. You take the Avengers films; they're all on the, the
I'm
biggest
sorry,
films.
we are not putting No Country for Old Men and Avatar in the same bracket. Absolutely.
I'm not putting them in the same bracket. No, I'm not. What I'm trying to say is the biggest, the titans of film, in terms of the success. Maybe not award success, which is maybe where this is the kind of, the artistic side of a film really is, still unique. But in terms of, monetary success and society, kind of success in terms of being talked about, being franchised, all this. It's big. Everything's big. It's all loud. These huge epic soundtracks taking epic songs from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and like overlaying them over these epic action sequences and all that. And this is just kind of like the complete opposite. Yet it's still not, like Avengers and Avatar are not on the top 10 list of films in the 21st century. This is, and it kind of it definitely has an appeal for that. It's so different that it's enjoyable for its differences, but it's also like like you said, you didn't even notice it the first time. It's enjoyable in its own right, which I think definitely gets a stamp of approval for sure.
Hmm.
And it is a
I
really good
think
one.
it's because I'm going to go back to that good old fashioned saying: silence just speaks immense volumes sometimes.
Yeah.
And I guess I didn't notice the soundtrack because I didn't, maybe subconsciously I didn't feel like the film needed one.
I think its soundtrack is meant to work on that like subconscious level anyway.
Mhm.
So to not have one, you don't really miss it until you hear it. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's that sort of.
And even if it did have one, if it was a successful soundtrack, again, would we have even noticed it?
Well, yeah, that's what you're not meant to notice it. If it's a good soundtrack, you're
Yeah,
not meant to notice it. So
exactly.
yeah,
But I think it's a very successful film without a soundtrack. I think that the fact that it did so well without one speaks quite well to how the film is shot and how it was written and adapted and how it was edited as well on a Mac with Final Cut Pro.
I mean, the fact that the main like murder weapon in the film is a cattle gun, it's just
Mm.
like
Yeah.
like gruesome and it's just epic. Like it's just like it's kind of imaginative, and I love it for that. It's so
Mhm.
strange. Although one fact that I did find out is a little bit of a goof of the film. So if you've not watched the film, essentially what the serial killer Anton uses to kill his victims with is this kind of pneumatic gun. It's like it fires this kind of
it's like
kind of
compressed
pin.
air, isn't it?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
basically uses compressed air to like fire a pin about 3 inches out from a handle, and obviously that is, when used on human skulls, like he has a tendency to do, has pretty messy consequences for the victims. But he actually uses it to break through doors and doorknobs. That actually wouldn't work in real life because the bolt going through the door into the door frame would still be there. So it's a bit of a goof, but I
Wow.
thought that was kind of
You'd think they'd like do the research on that, wouldn't you?
yeah,
Surely.
maybe, but it's still pretty good.
I mean, it's a cool like feature, but
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. It's a bit annoying that they didn't research that.
Yeah, like I said, when you start to research a film, it kind of you stuff makes more sense, but also you start to find out all the gaffes and the issues that it has. But
Maybe
Yeah.
there's just no good country for old door locks. So-
Well, on that bombshell,
yeah.
absolute
good night.
travesty. Yeah, good night. That's me out. I'm done. No, let's talk about Fantastic Mr. Fox, shall we?
Yeah, it's a shame that No Good Country. Sorry, I keep saying No Good Country. No Country for Old Men isn't like a normal film of the week because I feel like we could talk about it for a lot longer. But yeah, let's move on. Talk about Fantastic Mr. Fox. Things that Joe didn't enjoy this week.
Really?
But yeah, Charlie, why don't you start us off? This was your film as well.
Wow, I can't believe you didn't like this. It's amazing. Oh, it's so cute. How can you not like it?
Wes Anderson, man, is
He's
weird.
weird. He is weird.
Yeah.
That's like literally in the notes for the listeners. We've just got Wes
Yeah.
Anderson is weird.
Well, I'll say some very quick things, and I'll let you guys talk about it. I think compared to what it was up against, and I mean largely that was the reason why we chose it because we
Yeah.
didn't want to. This is snubs week, so we're looking at things that didn't win what we expected them to win, and obviously 2010 Academy Awards was Up, Pixar, Coraline, Princess and the Frog. I've seen pretty much all of those films, and I can see why Up won. Obviously, that emotional kind of catharsis, and it's a Pixar film. They're all great,
Yeah.
apart from Cars 3.
Is
And then
that a
you've
thing?
got yeah,
Cars 3.
Cars 3.
Wow.
Yeah,
Great film.
they should have just called it like Trucks or Caravans. I don't know. And then Coraline as well. Neil Gaiman, big fan of his books, and I think Coraline was a really, again, one of the two obscure animations that year with
Tim
Fantastic
Burton,
Mr.
isn't it?
Fox. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I just think Coraline was a lot more adventurous with its animation,
Wow.
and
Okay.
yeah, and so with Wes Anderson, it's either very pretty or distracting for me, and I found Fantastic Mr. Fox distracting, and the main thing being that it was shot at like half the frames, 12 frames a second
Yeah.
rather than 24.
So you notice
So
like it's more obvious that it's animated.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that Fantastic Mr. Fox should have been like 144 hertz Counter Strike global offensive smooth, with like 1 millisecond refresh. No, I just that amount of choppiness for me was a little bit. It reminded me that it was like puppeteering animation, and that, I mean, don't get me wrong, stop motion animation looks really great sometimes, but I think when you're doing it with puppets as well, and things that they had like real fur on them, it's a little bit jarring. But that's my penny's worth on Fantastic Mr. Fox. But great soundtrack, um, great voice cast as well.
Yeah,
Obviously, Wes
definitely.
Anderson always works with pretty much the same people. You can always guarantee in his film you're going to get Bill Murray, Owen Wilson. So yeah,
Wow.
really, wow, a really great cast. But yeah, Charlie, I mean, you were quite surprised when I said I didn't like it, so
Yeah.
I'd
I
really like
just
to hear your take.
I thought everyone loved this film. I just don't know how you can't. I don't know. It's so cute and it works for both kids and adults on like on a Pixar level. Like everyone enjoys a Pixar film. If you're a kid, if you're an adult, there's something in it for everyone. And I feel this does that, but like to an extreme like level. It's amazing. I can't believe you don't rate it that much. That's mental.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you should be. What,
I don't
what
know.
did you think, Ben?
Hmm.
And obviously the source material is amazing as well. Like,
Yeah, Roald Dahl,
yeah,
no question
Yeah.
there, absolutely.
I think as a film, I think like Joe said, it is quite jarring. The fact that it's animation, but it kind of blurs the lines because it's like real fur, and it's for me. There's one thing that really stood out to me was, I don't know about you, maybe this is just my personal preference, but when I'm watching an animation, I'm not really there for the voice. Like I don't, as long as the voice fits the character and it kind of gives off the right the right vibe, the right energy, that commands the presence, it works for the role, like then I'm fine. It doesn't need to be George Clooney, it doesn't need to be Meryl Streep. I don't necessarily, for me, another jarring aspect for it was like when I heard the characters, I just kind of heard the celebrities behind them, and it almost to the point it was like listening to an audiobook. At times it was like, well, I'm just listening to like Stephen Fry talk about what's the one he does? Is it Harry Potter that he does?
Sherlock Holmes, isn't he? I think as
Sherlock
well.
Holmes,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's that for me that just kind of jarred it slightly. Also, I was comparing it against Up like constantly because I knew that they
Right.
were both at the same time, which maybe is a little unfair. Um, but yeah, it was okay. I wouldn't watch it again.
Wow.
But
I
it
can't.
was
Honestly, that's really shocked me that neither of you are like amazed by it. But I suppose this is like you with No Country for Old Men, isn't it, Joe?
Yeah, I guess so.
Like,
I think just also, well, I mean, No Country for Old Men, the only kind of film that I felt like it had major competition with that year was There Will Be Blood, which Daniel Day-Lewis won Best Actor for. And that's a seemingly kind of very moody, I think it's Paul W.S. Anderson who did that film. But then when you look at Fantastic Mr. Fox, that was up against for Best Animation, it's quite low down for me in terms of, if I was to order them. The Princess and the Frog too. It's a great Disney musical, and it was kind of the first time that you saw the main character was this, as a black character, a person of color. The princess was black, and instead of it being a traditional tale of chivalry where women are suited for certain roles, and the knight, it has to be the chivalrous one, the perfect knight, and the princess kissing the frog and turning the frog into a prince, and they get happily married. in the film at the start, the princess, she's not even really a princess. She just kisses this frog and actually ends up turning into a frog herself. So then they both get trapped as frogs, and
Right, that's cool.
the
I've
film is
not
just
seen
really
it, so.
it's good. I watched it on a whim. My girlfriend recommended it. She's a huge Disney fan, and was like, "You need to watch Princess and the Frog." And I think it sets a really, really great image for progressive storytelling for children. It's also got some fantastic musical numbers in it, and I think that paired with the inventive animation in Coraline and how that was kind of like horror thriller but suitable for families,
It's
and
very Tim Burton.
yeah, exactly. And then obviously just that heart wrenching opening to Up and the Pixar animation and soundtrack. Fantastic Mr. Fox was up against a very fierce competition, the likes of which I don't think No Country for Old Men was up against.
Right, yeah.
So it was a very close year. I still think, I think Up deserved its win. And I think Coraline, Princess and the Frog were very, very close behind, and Fantastic Mr. Fox as well, close behind. I can't speak for Secret of Kells. I haven't watched that, but
Yeah, I'd never heard of it either.
yeah,
Me neither.
but
It must have been good then, boys, you know.
yeah, I guess so. I guess so. Yeah, but no, I mean, maybe I should cut it some slack. It obviously, with it being stop motion, would have taken so long to film, and again, the cast is amazing. It's a jarring film, jarring animation, and
it is jarring, like when
yeah,
it is a bit beautiful as well. Like there's parts in it, and it's like,
yeah,
wow, like the detail in some of the shots is unreal. Like it's amazing.
yeah, absolutely. I think Noah Baumbach wrote the screenplay with Wes Anderson. And I'm a huge fan of Noah. He obviously did Marriage Story a couple of years ago.
Wow.
So yeah, there's a lot of very big names attached to Fantastic Mr. Fox, and maybe it was a bit of a smaller, less ambitious animation. I feel like maybe it would have gone further for me, because I found that with. Did you watch Isle of Dogs a couple of years ago as well?
I haven't, no, but
That
it's on my list. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
a bit
Isle of
of it.
Dogs was exactly the same for me. It was weird Wes Anderson animation. It was obviously a stellar cast and great script. It looked beautiful, but it was jarring, and it kind of felt like it was. I mean, this is kind of what I feel like for most Wes Anderson films, is that, you know, a big cast and weird cinematography and weird set pieces don't always make a good film. Like there's weird, and then there's
Wes Anderson.
yeah.
I feel that his style of filmmaking, you either love it or you're just a bit like meh. I love it, and I'm guessing you're a bit meh about it.
Yeah,
Sounds of it.
I think the only film of his that I really like, perhaps maybe The Life Aquatic,
Okay, not
or
Grand Budapest Hotel.
yeah, and that's what I was going to
Oh,
say.
okay.
Grand Budapest Hotel, I think, is his most watchable one.
I feel like that strikes a good balance between the animation and obviously live action, where like the animation doesn't really, it's not as jarring.
Yeah,
it fits the aesthetic more.
and it's very creative with aspect ratio as well, and it's not, you know,
Yes,
shoved down your
yeah.
throat like some creative visionaries like Zack Snyder.
Yeah. And his film isn't 5 hours long.
Yeah, I really like 4x3. I'm eating my words. I'm sorry. But yeah, Fantastic Mr. Fox doesn't quite get a seal of approval from me, I'm
It's
afraid.
not too
but
fantastic for Joe.
no, it's just Mr. Fox 2009. Yeah, nominator for an Academy Award, I guess.
Yeah.
But I tell you what I do really, really love, and that is Good Will Hunting. I'm glad we saved this till the last, best till last, in my opinion. It was my
Me and Ben were on about it before. Sorry to cut you off.
yeah,
But
no.
we don't get the name
Mm-hmm.
of the film. Could you explain it? I know
Well, his name's Will Hunting.
I know, but why is it good?
Because he's good.
Yeah, but Good Will Hunting is like, where's the apostrophe? I mean, where's
No,
the,
so it's a double meaning. So it's about Will Hunting becoming good, but it's also about hunting and tracking down acts of goodwill, like, you know, him going to therapy and overcome. Yeah, it's a play on words. It's
Right.
creative. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't like the name still.
It's arty.
Yeah,
That's fair.
you just call it Will Hunting.
Will Hunting. Yeah.
Hunting
Maybe.
Will.
Hunting
Yeah.
Will, yeah. That's a
Hunting
different
Will.
film entirely.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's the horror spoof.
Yeah.
before I talk about it, I'm actually really eager to know what you thought. Ben, we'll start with you. Did you get a chance to watch it?
I did, and I have to say I did thoroughly enjoy it.
Good.
It's just a very good film. I did particularly like as well the backstory behind it, that it's Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. They
Mm.
like kind of, I'm not sure if they fully wrote it, but they basically picked it up, wrote it, and kind of pushed it and presented it, which is quite interesting. You don't really think, that's kind of like, I mean, they were very small time, I think, back then, when they were friends, childhood friends,
Hmm.
they're from Boston, aren't they? I think.
Oh, they're actually friends. Like, they're actually friends.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
that's so
So
cool. I didn't know that.
yeah, so it's kind of like they almost kind of just play themselves in a way. Obviously it's for a screenplay, and it's for, they put the personas in there, but
Yeah,
it's quite nice to see that. And I
like
quite
a
I
real
quite enjoyed.
friendship
Yeah,
on
yeah, I
screen. Yeah.
enjoyed that aspect of it. But yeah, great film. He kind of annoys me the amount of times he changes his mind. That definitely riled me up a little bit. I was like, just make a decision, man. Like, do you want a job or not?
I think that's good though, because that's really great characterization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could talk for days about how wonderfully written the sort of the psychological aspects of this film are. But no, I'm really glad that you liked it.
Well, it just hits. I think it hits a lot of good points. We got that kind of that hug at the end with Robin
Mhm.
Williams, and it, like, that's got a lot of emotion behind it. And then
Mhm.
obviously, watching it now, kind of post Robin Williams passing, it almost kind of hit again. There's like a deeper, like, oof, that,
Yeah, big oof. Oof sigh
yeah,
is
big
massive.
oof, and it's it's like,
Huge
oof, yeah, emotional. It gets you, and in what the ending, like, unlike other films that we selected this week, actually kind of comes to a nice climax. There's a nice happy ending. He goes and gets his girl. The only person that loses out is the MIT professor. He kind of standing
Yeah,
there.
yeah. But he's a bit of an arse though,
Yeah, I
isn't
was just about to say,
Yeah,
like,
Yeah.
he's a dick.
yeah.
I didn't like the actor either that played
Oh,
him.
it's Stellan
I
Skarsgård.
really
Yeah,
just there was nothing to him, that performance at all. It was just dead.
yeah. Sometimes he's a really great actor, and yes, and sometimes he's been in the Avengers, Thor. He's in the upcoming Dune adaptation as well. He's playing
Oh wow.
Baron Harkonnen.
Yeah, I
Um,
like him. I think he's cool. His brothers are
in
weird
in
though.
in defense of him, though, if you get a chance to watch HBO and Sky's Chernobyl series,
Yes. Yeah.
he
Yeah.
plays. Yeah, he's in that, and he is fantastic in that.
We should do that on the podcast sometime.
Yeah,
It's
we
so
absolutely
good.
should.
It's
I watched it
amazing.
all on a plane to America. I was like, right, I've got 7 hours. Like,
Nice.
I'm going to watch 5 hours of Chernobyl and just get it out of the way. But yeah, yeah, and obviously Stellan Skarsgård, yeah, his performance is a little flat. But what I'm hoping is that, with it being a coming of age film, Charlie, did you like it?
Yeah. No. Yeah. It's amazing. It is a good film.
Yeah.
It's not.
Great.
It's not.
Right, that's it.
Phew.
End the podcast
That's
there.
it.
End
Quick.
the
It's not on. I don't know why I compared it instantly to Dead Poets Society, and it's not on that level
Yeah.
for me. But it's so heartwarming.
Mhm.
It's definitely one that brings out the tears, but in a good way.
Mm.
Well, not in a good. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not.
Yeah, no,
You're not
absolutely.
crying because it's sad. You're crying because you're happy for the characters.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, it's good.
So,
Although
So-
my only thing that I had with it, right, is, and this is when I was doing some research on it, was I found out about the maths problem. So for those of you, if you haven't watched it, the whole plot of the film is there's this kind of wonder kid who works as a janitor at MIT, and it is at MIT, right? The
yeah.
university, yeah. And the maths professor is kind of like bigging it up, like, it took us 2 years to solve this problem. I've written it on the blackboard in the hallway. Whoever can solve it, is basically like, you're a genius, and we want you to, it's just like a challenge he sets his students. And anyway, of course, none of them can do it. And the janitor, as he's cleaning the halls, sees the problem and goes and solves it. But I, I found out about the problem. It's not really that hard. but then, like in the film,
Ben
it's like
solved it like instantly. He was like watching it.
yeah,
Being
I'm
like,
a
I know that.
genius.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that's like sin tan over pie. Got that?
No,
Sorted.
it's the no, the first one with the trees with the it's got like the really weird it's the what's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
words you use? It's like you have to basically it's like a set of rules. It's like you can't have a dot that has 2 lines on it. They always have to have 3 lines on it. And it's basically like draw a load of shapes that meet these rules and there's only like 9 options or 10 options. And it's just like I mean, in fairness, in doing research, I found out originally they wanted to make it like a physics problem, which I could suppose could probably have been like they could probably done a lot harder. And I think they were advised to make it a maths problem so that people could kind of identify more with it.
I
But yeah,
didn't identify with it at all.
Same. Like, not a clue.
I mean, yeah. In fairness, I this is only after the fact. Like when I was watching it, I was like, "Wow, that's amazing!" You know,
They could have
Yeah,
just
that's
been
fair.
doodling on the board for all I know. Like,
Yeah.
Isn't that just maths? Like in
Oui.
general.
It's like when they released Interstellar and they were like, okay, this is all real science. We've got Kip Thorne who works for NASA and he's writing all these equations and they're 100% real. And I was like, mate, you could literally draw like
Smiley
Chinese
faces.
on that
Yeah.
and smiley faces on that whiteboard. And I would believe you
I've
if
not
you
a
said
clue.
that that was the key to gravity.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess if you're in that field, so I have a friend who's at Princeton University, doing physics, and he's incredibly smart. And actually, this is his favorite film. So I watched it for the first time on a train with him in Europe, which was it was a great experience. And he doesn't get phased by the inaccuracies or like the easiness of the maths. For him, it's the story. So I guess that if someone like that who knows math really well can put it past them, I think.
Oh no,
I think
no!
you
Don't
can.
get me wrong. I'm not saying it. I'm hung up on it. I was just saying that when I researched it, I was like, oh man, I was expecting it to be this
Oh
crazy.
man,
Yeah,
Ben's
I was like,
it was a 5-star film, but now that I know the maths problem's easy, it's like the
Yeah.
worst film I've ever seen.
yeah,
4 out of
awful.
5. No quick maths.
Yeah. Great maths.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you haven't
Two
been
plus
able to
two
catch
is
the
4.
film at home, the rest of the plot, as Ben described at the start, the rest of the plot is Will Hunting.
He's good.
He's from a very he's good. Shut up, Chaz. He's from a very working class area in Boston, and a lot of his friends that he loves and adores, they're all from working class families, and Will himself is an orphan who has been put through several foster homes. And the plot of the film is that Will gets arrested for getting into a fight on a basketball pitch, and but because he had done the maths problem at MIT during his shift at work, Professor Lambo basically tracks him down in prison and says, "Okay, the court has decided to overrule your charges on 2 conditions. 1, you come and work for me, and we'll do math together. And 2, you've got to go see a therapist." And that kind of kicks off the plot because he meets Robin Williams' character, which is Sean. He's a therapist who works at a community college, and really from there, it's just this film that really quite wonderfully discusses knowledge versus intellect. Which one's better? Is it better to be more knowledgeable, or is it better to be more intellectual? And I really like that aspect of the film. Will is very knowledgeable. He's really smart, but he never uses his intellect to boost his morale or to get himself anywhere in life. And because of that, he's missing out on his potential. And so what you see is this really great, in my opinion, some of the most fantastically well-written psychological aspects I've ever seen in a film, because Will is so traumatized, and his philosophy is that stepping outside of his comfort zone is just going to lead to pain because of his experience as being a foster kid and being an orphan. And so he uses a lot of really cool defense mechanisms.
Really cool. I don't know if you call them
Yeah,
that.
as in they're really cool isn't interesting. So when he's talking to Sean, when he's having his therapy sessions, he goes through loads of different defense mechanisms to make sure that he's not vulnerable. And so he'll mock Sean, he'll flex his intellect and be like, "Oh, have you read all these books?" "Yeah, I've read all those books." Or then he'll like try and rationalize. So when he gets the job at the NSA and he goes to his interview, he then basically just does this huge monologue on how essentially if he works for the NSA, it's going to have this domino effect, and then this baby seal is going to get clubbed to death over oil.
Yeah.
And then the third mechanism he uses, he regresses. He moves back to his comfortable state, and that's expressed in his group of friends. He likes that he doesn't have to grow up when he's around them because they're quite immature. Which is completely thrown out of the window when at the end of the film, his closest friend in the world, this big, immature ape of a guy who's basically like, hey man, if you're still building houses and laying bricks when you're 40, I'm going to kill you. And he actually says that, I'm going to kill you because it would be disrespectful to us. Like you've got a winning lottery ticket and you're sitting on it. And so what I really like about this film is it uses supporting characters so well to like fuel the plot, which you don't see a lot in coming of age films, really. Coming of age films can be like really personal and rely on a lot of exposition, whether it's like writing in a diary or, monologuing or montages and that kind of thing. But Good Will Hunting doesn't really do any of that.
It's like a lot of coming of age stories focus on like main character syndrome, don't they? Like sort of like the main character is the only thing that matters. But in this, I feel like it, as you say, the supporting cast really elevate the main like character story.
Absolutely. And they all bring out a side of Will, whether it's when his relationship with Skylar deteriorates. It kind of proves Will's point that if he lets himself get emotional or lets himself actually trust her, then he's going to get traumatized again, like he was when his foster father was putting cigarettes out on him, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so it takes Will like this huge amount of catharsis to overcome his trauma. And that leads to this really beautiful moment at the end of the film where Robin Williams is holding this file of basically Will's entire life, the foster homes he's been in, there's pictures of his body in the file with like cigarette burns and scratches and bruises, and it's horrible. And what Sean does, that's Robin Williams' character, he just repeats himself over and over again, it's not your fault, it's not your fault. And that's my favorite part in the film. Not the ending, because in my opinion, the ending is just, it's predictable. It's cliche, got to go see about a girl driving off into the sunset. But that doesn't bother me at all because the film is not the sum of its parts. The film is the supporting characters pushing him to that point of catharsis till finally he goes through all of his defense mechanisms with Sean. Right at the end, you'll notice that the first time Sean says it's not your fault, he goes to mocking as his mechanism. He's like, yeah, I know. And he's like laughing. And then Sean says, no, it's not your fault. And then he's like, now he's trying to rationalize. And then Sean says, it's not your fault again. And then he gets angry and like, he's like, don't fuck with me. And he pushes him until finally Sean refuses to let him escape. That Will just has this huge release of emotion, and it's fantastic. And I've actually got a line here from the script, from the screenplay, that I really like, and I just wanted you guys to hear it. The action here says, we pull back from this image, two lonely souls being father and son together. So that's nice. Matt Damon and Ben Affleck's actual words there, how they wanted that moment to be, and it's fantastic.
Because he calls him son quite a few times, like after that moment, doesn't he?
Well, they relate because they both had, I think another moment where Will shows his vulnerability to try and boost his morale is he actually asks Sean, have you had any experience with that?
Yeah.
And then Sean's like, yeah, I've had experience with kids like you. And he's like, no, have you had any experience with that? And he was like, yeah, my dad always used to make me pick.
Putting a wrench.
Yeah. So they relate really well.
The belt and the stick. And it's like, I chose the wrench because fuck him, that's why.
Yeah, I like that bit.
Yeah, that was a great quote.
And then in terms of like the knowledge versus intellect, obviously I feel like, Sean represents one side of that coin. And I like how the film shows the pros and cons of both being knowledgeable and being intellectual. And then, where can Will find the balance between the two? And I think the director, I'm not sure who the DOP is on this, but I really like the way that they use, like the kaleidoscope effect when Will's
Yes.
like having one of his reading montages.
It's in like at the beginning as well, isn't it? Like the big
Yeah, I
starting
mean,
credit.
I don't know about you, but like to me, it kind of demonstrated the complexity and details of Will's life. Because like on a surface level, a kaleidoscope, it makes things all the same, like duplicated.
Yeah.
So to me, that's like all of the facets of Will's life duplicated. They're all the same thing, and what's linking them together is his trauma. But then I guess what the beauty of a kaleidoscope is that it shows the beauty of order. No matter how traumatized Will is, all of the aspects of his life are ordered and connected, and it's something that he can overcome through catharsis. So that's what it made me think of. Because first time I watched it, I was like, "What the fuck is this DOP on like with a kaleidoscope, man?" But I guess like thinking about it, it's a really nice way of it's something you don't see in coming of age films, and it's a really nice use of cinematography, I think, and also the use of color is fantastic as well.
Yeah.
There's a really good bit where Will is looking at the painting that Sean did, the paint by numbers,
Yeah.
and when he gets like really far up against the painting, it's almost like he's overexposed.
Mm.
But I think that's the point, because when Will is in this uncomfortable situation, the palette is reflected in the lens with like really cold colors
I was gonna say
or
'cause
like overexposure.
after Will leaves, it like the painting like looks darker. Like
Mhm.
the second time you look at it from Sean's sort of perspective, it's taken on like a
Mhm.
darker tone, which is it's
Yeah,
interesting
exactly.
as a like a cinematography choice.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, towards the end of the film, like his t-shirts, he starts to wear like more browns and beiges when he's in Sean's office, and Sean's office also feels like a little more warm towards the end. Like they're pretty much in darkness, like at the end. Like it's cozy. It feels like warm.
Yeah,
Like
like
I
Karen.
want to be in that office.
Yeah,
It's lovely. All those books and those comfy chairs. Whereas at the start, when Professor Lambo and his assistant are in there with Sean and with Will, like it's so bright outside and the corridors letting in so much light, and
feels
like
very
it's just not a place
clinical.
you want to. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not a place you want to be. So the use of color is just amazing. It makes me drool. I love it.
My favorite scene was when Ben Affleck came to the house and he was gone. Like 'cause he says, doesn't he? Like my favorite part of the day is the 10 seconds when I walk from the car to your door, like thinking you might not be there because you've like moved on and fulfilled your potential. It's just a really nice moment. There's a lot of setups in the film that get paid off really well. Yeah, it's just nice.
Yeah,
Mhm.
setups is
Yeah.
definitely like they just keep almost like they almost kind of keep going to that precipice point where it might happen, and he might,
Mhm.
you know, that it might kind of just solve itself, and then there's the kind of the next layer of almost like is trauma the right word, or just the kind of like we are talking about the defense mechanisms that Will has in place, and it's kind of just unpicking through them in a
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
almost like a cyclical fashion. It just goes round and round and round, and then it kind of finally spins out, and yeah, he gets to the door and he's not there. Although
There was a
ironically,
great
he doesn't actually. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Go
no,
on.
go on.
Oh, I was going to say, ironically, he doesn't actually, the whole thing about you've got a lottery ticket, use it, and it's
Mhm.
just like he's actually not there because he's chasing a girl with a car that you gave him. Like he's not actually got a job or anything, which I thought was like on one side kind of like
Dick move.
yeah, like dude, come on, like go get a job or
Happy
something.
birthday, man. Here's your car. Okay, bye. Have a great time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I'm never gonna see you again.
Yeah,
But
Like
bye.
fulfilling potential
mm,
doesn't have to mean a successful career, does it?
no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
No, you are right, and I think that it definitely addresses that. It's like actually happiness for him and his, for him being a better person and being good. Hey, it's about finding that partner and that that the girl that he kind of shunned and pushed away, but actually realizes that he wants to be with her, which it's nice. It's
I
great.
feel it's set up throughout the film for the fulfilling potential is career and well, eventually money, I suppose. But then
Mhm.
the payoff at the end is that it isn't that, is it?
Mm.
That's really nice. It's a subversion again. Like, I feel a lot of these films this week deal with film conventions and
Mhm.
not fulfilling them in the way we expect, which is
Maybe
nice.
we were just subverting the theme that we said we were going to do. You know, don't know.
Oh,
Oh, go on, Ben. That's deep.
yeah. I do think this has been my favorite week of the festival, and I think maybe that's why is that it's a lot of films that just make you think. And like I was thinking about these films all week, and I was actually a little bit nervous about what I was going to say and what I was going to bring to the table for this discussion. And I've actually found that I haven't looked at my notes as much this week because I've just kind of had this pure joy of just talking about the unexpected in a lot of these films, and I just think Good Will Hunting, it just really hits all the right notes for me, and as not only as a coming of age film, but as like an investigation into the psyche of of pain and trauma. And the message I take away from the film is that you need to take risk in life, and whatever that risk comes as, whether it is a job or a scary job interview, or whether it's chasing a girl across the country because you know that you love her. The film constantly reminds us to take those risks, but we can't get to that point where we acknowledge that without all of those amazing supporting characters throughout. And the use of cinematography and the way that when Will is feeling vulnerable, it's handheld camera. It's making us feel there, and it's making us feel pain with him. And then when he's bonding with a character, the camera is still, and it's on like a close up with the details of his face, or the details of Sean's face, or Skylar's face, or Chucky's face, and then the camera pans very little in the film,
Mm.
if you notice. And one of the only notable times where I saw it panning is in the park, where Sean is giving Will that big speech about if I asked you to talk about love, you'd probably quote me a sonnet. If I asked you to talk to me about art, you'd probably talk to me about Monet. But you've never been in the Sistine Chapel. You've never
Yeah.
looked into the eyes of a woman. And if I asked you to talk about war, you'd probably quote Shakespeare to me. But you've never held your friend's your friend's arms as he's dying. And if you notice throughout the entire speech, the camera is just fixed on Sean, but it's slowly panning to the right.
It's a really nice shot.
It's a really nice shot. And by the end of the speech, both Will and Sean are in the shot with no editing, kind of showing how, Will's listening to him and they're bonding. And it's just
does a similar thing.
Beautiful.
There's a scene with when he's with Skylar, and like the first time they're in bed together, and it does the same thing, like panning up and down their like bodies together. It's really nice. But that's like camera movement is a way to show bonding in the film. It's nice.
Yeah, what a great film.
I actually doing some research on this film, I stumbled across John Krasinski actually did a reading of the film. And if you haven't seen the story behind it or seen it, it's actually hilarious in only the way that Jim from The Office can make it. And he's like, "All right, so my name's Will," and then there's just Matt Damon runs on. It's like, "No, you're not. That's me." And then John Krasinski's like, "But you were okay with me playing the part a second ago." "Oh, I guess I'll be what's Ben Affleck's character called again?"
Chucky.
Oh yeah, it's like, "I guess Chucky's not too bad," and Ben Affleck storms on. So he's like, "All right, guess I'll just be the maths professor." Just like sets down to it. It's hilarious as well because Emily Blunt plays the Skylar role, and obviously there's the whole like kissing bit and the sex bit, and John Krasinski's just like narrating it and reading out, and he's like, and they did definitely not kiss. And it's just quite funny, but it's a like kind of a light-hearted take on it. I think it was maybe like a 10
Saturday
year,
Night Live or something.
15 year,
Yeah,
something like that. But it's interesting because I think John Krasinski from Boston as well, I think.
I think there's a big sort of group of actors that are all from like a similar area and knew of each other when they were at drama school, and so have worked together a few times. Obviously, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. They won this Academy Award for Best Screenplay at 22.
Mental.
They were 22.
talent.
which it's incredible talent. Unfortunately, the only I hate to end on a bad note, but unfortunately, the film was financed by Harvey Weinstein
Oh God.
because he was like, "Yeah, I believe in you boys. I'll give
That's
you,
it.
I'll give
It's
you
a
this
trash
budget."
film. Absolutely trash.
Yeah, in this day and age, unfortunately on this podcast we come across maybe a few too many films that have kind of been tarnished in the wake of political movements and everything. But we just got to remind ourselves that we're here to talk about what a film means and
Got to separate
what it
the
means to
art
us.
from the
And
artist.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, which sometimes you just got to do, but
It's hard to do, but
it's hard. But I think we're doing a pretty good job so far.
I don't. You can't not look at films because of the people that made them, because you just can't do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely understand that. And that's why I will continue to try and watch as many Wes Anderson films as I can.
Did I detect a lie?
No. Well, listen, guys, it's been so great to talk about these films this week. Again, can't state it enough. This has been my favorite week of the festival, and I think this is going to be a great podcast to listen back to. Good Will Hunting, my favorite film of the week, definitely gets my seal of approval. Fantastic Mr. Fox. Charles, I'll take your word for it. I'm glad that you talked about it and enjoyed it, and I'm glad we had such a in-depth conversation about No Country for Old Men. I feel like we could revisit it in the future and have a different discussion. Maybe a second watch might
change up mine and Ben's minds. Yeah.
I will definitely watch Scoob this week, and I'll get
on
back
it,
to
mate.
you.
Get on it.
I will get on it, but also to get on for next week, we do have Nomadland, we have Mank, we have the Trial of Chicago 7, and we have Da 5 Bloods. Obviously, those films need no introduction. They are all the 2021 Academy Award Best Picture nominations. Not all of them. We can't cram all 9 films in 1 week, but we have picked 4 that we feel like are the most different and the ones to watch. So please stay tuned for that. If you want to stay tuned and you want to keep on top of the podcast that we are doing and support us, please go and follow our link tree where you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and please do be sure to check out our podcast on Spotify. And if you don't know, we are actually on YouTube as well, so you can listen along with a tab open if you want to listen to us for free. But as always, this has been Joe from the Shoal Weekly Podcast, bringing you The Greatest Showman with my trusted companions. We've got Ben and Charlie. But thank you for listening very much, and we will catch you next week for our Academy Awards watch along. Cheers.